Hey guys, I am Hana, evolutionary astrologer. Welcome back to my channel. And in this video, let's unpack these next 6 weeks, and that's until September 27th. The planet Mars will be moving through the sign of Cancer. So, what are the intentions of this cycle? What is this transit about? And what are some of the themes that we may experience? What are the risks as well? The risks that we need to be aware of and whenever possible try to minimize. And ultimately, how can we best align ourselves with this energy, with the energy of Mars and Cancer? So, first of all, Mars is the planet that speaks about our energy system, our focus, our will, our desire, our capacity to get things done. So Mars says, let's go, let's do this. It comes with a very active energy. And Cancer, on the other hand, is a water sign, and it has everything to do with our emotional world, our feeling world. Cancer talks about our homes, literally where we live, our physical homes, but also our greater sense of home. So, our neighborhood, our city, our country, and even the lands that we live on. It also speaks about family and ancestry. So, our families of origin, but also the family of choice, our loved ones. And even, the people or the beings that are not necessarily biologically related to us, that's still part of our family, right? That's part of our it's the people that we feel the closest to, the people we feel intimate with, and the people that we sense that we belong with, that give us that sense of belonging. Cancer is also about our mothers and mothering and nurturing, our own personal needs, our own personal world, but also others. And it speaks so much about what we need in order to feel safe and secure in the world, at home, in our work, in our friendships, in our relationships, etc. And of course, this is going to be very different for everybody. Some people will need, for example, routine, a lot of routine to feel safe. Other people may need a lot of privacy. Others may need a lot of connection, a lot of social experiences. Maybe you need to get out of the house much more. Or for others, it's all about affection, the need for physical affection, for touch and hugs, right? Other people will need reassurance. So all these different things, we all need different things in order to feel good and feel safe in this world, in this life. So when Mars enters Cancer, there is a very strong emphasis on taking action around those themes, around those Cancerian themes. So this can be a time when we need to take action in order to feel safer. We may become much more aware of our emotional needs and much more motivated to get those needs met. This can mean expressing ourselves emotionally, expressing love, expressing affection. This could also be about asking for support, asking for help, or even becoming more direct about what we need from the people around us. So this is a great time to take action on the things that are very authentic to you and that are very personal to you. So the things that you genuinely feel very connected to, maybe it's working on a project that's very close to your heart. Maybe you love playing a certain game. Maybe you love reading books or creating something or cooking, gardening, or whatever it is that, whenever you're doing that, whenever you're in that environment, in that energy, in that activity, it feels good and it feels like you. So Mars in Cancer can really help us and encourage us to put more energy into what we feel emotionally connected to instead of doing things out of obligation or the things that we think we should be doing, etc. So it's really a time to do more of what feels personal and meaningful and really close to your heart. This can also be a really great time to reconnect with family, to spend more time with your loved ones. It's also great to repair relationships and help to support and protect the people we care about and become more actively involved in also your home life and the actual home you live in. So you may suddenly want to clean the house or renovate or organize or redecorate or spend more time inside and cook more or make your home more comfortable or finally deal with whatever it is that you've been postponing it in regarding your living situation that you've been, postponing. And now it's a time that it can really help to reconnect with those things and get things done. This could also include something about fighting for your family, you know, and that could come from helping them or defend your home, protecting also your emotional space. This is really important. And part of this energy, part of this time, these 6 weeks of Mars in Cancer, speak a lot about establishing boundaries, right? And advocating for maybe the people, the things, the places that you love. So Cancer at its best is incredibly nurturing. So the highest expression of Mars in Cancer is tremendous emotional strength, right? There can be this tremendous motivation to nourish yourself, nourish other people, to cook for someone, to give love to others, to take care of them, to show up emotionally. Sometimes we show up emotionally through a hug, through a text message, through our presence. But it's really showing up and protecting and helping to create safety and love and belonging ultimately, which is what Cancer is all about. Uh, Sometimes this can show up through reparenting ourselves. So becoming more aware of our needs that maybe were not met earlier in life and consciously choosing to meet some of those needs now. Cancer takes us back to the past. So it's a time where we can go back to these past experiences and have new awarenesses and really use this to reparent ourselves, to make, again, to take action and do things that will ultimately make ourselves and others feel safer, feel better in this world. Um, but of course, we also need to talk about the more challenging expression of this transit because Mars in Cancer really heightens the emotional world. So this includes emotions like anger, frustration, fear, defensiveness, vulnerability, sadness, resentment. So Cancer in itself is extremely sensitive to its environment. So it's constantly feeling, it's a water sign, which has everything to do with our emotional world. So when Mars is here, we can become more defensive. We can become a lot more reactive and more easily threatened. So something that would normally maybe not bother you very much, suddenly can feel very personal. And you can quickly interpret it as a rejection or some sort of an exclusion. Or you may feel like the other person doesn't care enough. You may feel like someone crossed a boundary. And before you know it, you are reacting from that emotional place. So this is one of the biggest things to watch with Mars in Cancer. So are you responding to what is actually happening, or are you responding to the emotional trigger that what is happening has activated inside you? Because those two are very different things. Mars, wherever Mars is traveling, can bring disruptions and stressful situations. So wherever Mars goes, there can be that potential for fight, for battles, for conflict, for confrontation, for arguments. But ultimately, ultimately, Mars is the god of war. So we need to be particularly careful about engaging in conflict from a place of emotional reactivity, right? Especially within the Cancer environments. So remember, family, home, parents, children, the people we live with, the people that we are emotionally connecting and attaching to. So there can be family issues coming to the surface. There can be arguments with parents. There can be, especially involving the mother or the maternal side of the family. There can also be this push and pull, hot and cold. One moment, I need you. The next moment, leave me alone, right? One moment wanting connection, and the next moment we're inside the shell. That's part of the energy here. And I think it's so helpful to be aware that we might be feeling those things, and sometimes it won't even necessarily make sense, right? Um, and this can also be experienced through other people as well. So not just you being more emotionally reactive, but you are encountering people that are more, more easily triggered, more defensive behavior, more reactive, impulsive behavior in responses. So there can also be more passive aggressive behavior here with Mars in Cancer, because Cancer doesn't always express anger directly. Sometimes the way to, deal with it is to withdraw, right? To become quiet. Sometimes the other person will expect you to know what is wrong without you actually telling them. Or maybe you are doing this, someone hurt you, and then instead of talking to them, opening up the dialogue, explaining how you feel, expressing yourself, you are becoming moody, resentful, keeping it inside until it eventually explodes. So one of the greatest lessons for us, and really the greatest strategy here, is to communicate our emotional needs clearly and directly, but without weaponizing our emotions. So if there are situations in your life that are already difficult, chaotic, dramatic, or very emotionally charged, this may be a time when Mars inflamed things even further. So it's, really up to you to assess your situation, because really only you know the answer here. So is this the right moment to engage, to confront, and to push this issue? Or maybe the best strategy is to pull back and disengage for a little bit, so you're not adding more fuel to the fire, right? Sometimes taking action means confronting something, right? That's part of life. But other times, the wisest action is choosing not to participate in the drama. Mars wants to fight, right? But part of the Mars lessons for all of us is that not every battle needs to be fought, right? And certainly not every battle needs to be fought when everybody is very emotionally activated. So sometimes the stepping away, cooling down, allowing the situation to settle is actually the best strategic use of this Mars in Cancer. And again, you may notice these feelings and reactions in yourself, these experiences in your own life, but you may notice them in the people around you. People being more sensitive, more needy, or needing more reassurance. There could be people in your life that need your help, need your support. And there can also be a lot of emotional fluctuation, highs and lows, and the moods changing more quickly, feelings becoming bigger and more inflamed, and situations that are feeling more personal than they normally would. Collectively speaking, Mars in Cancer can also intensify battles connected to home and the homeland, territory, borders, nationalism, families, the whole conversation about belonging. So we might continue to see stronger emotional reactions around questions like who belongs here, who doesn't, what is our home, what are we protecting? What are we defending? Right? And because Mars can bring conflict, those themes can become heated very fast. So how do we work with this energy in a more conscious way? Because that's the gift of astrology. We know ahead of time what these next 6 weeks with Mars in Cancer will bring. What are the themes? We just spoke about them, right? So, one of the most important things that we can do during this time is to take time alone. Cancer has a shell for a reason. So retreating into that shell in order to reboot, to recuperate, to process, to digest, that's really important here. But at the same time, be careful not to stay inside of the shell for too long. The purpose of the shell, the Cancer shell, is not to hide from the world indefinitely, forever. The purpose of the shell is to go in, to retreat, to regroup, to feel, to process, to connect with yourself, and then come back into the world, right? It's a place of restoration. And in that time and space to understand what we're feeling and our needs. But then Mars says, get back out there. But do and get back out and do something with that awareness. Um, Again, Cancer is a sign that speaks about how we digest our emotions. And think about how digestion takes time. You wouldn't eat a huge meal and expect your body to digest everything in 30 seconds, right? So emotionally, it's the same thing. When Mars is rushing the Cancer process, we can become very emotionally impulsive. We feel something and immediately need to do something about it, right? We send a message, we make an accusation, we end the relationship, or we call that person, or we slam the door or say something that you don't truly mean, right? So sometimes the most powerful thing you can do under Mars in Cancer is to simply give yourself a little bit more time. Go into the shell, let yourself feel, let the emotional digestion happen. And then you decide what actually needs to be taken. Mars still wants action, right? But we don't necessarily have to act at the exact moment that the emotion is at its highest, most potent. Another important piece of this cycle is expression, as I already mentioned. So it is about expressing yourself, expressing your needs, your emotions, your love, your affection, but also practice self-assessment. Ask yourself, is this too much? Am I also listening? Am I the only one talking about how I feel, or am I also asking about how the other person feels? And am I expecting someone else to regulate an emotion that I need to sit with myself first? So again, before expressing things outwardly, I believe sometimes we really need to go through the internal work first. Otherwise, we get that side of Mars in Cancer that is just reactive and emotionally impulsive. And that's where we want to avoid here because that can lead to more resentment, more trouble, more fighting. Another thing that I suggest here is to pay extra attention to what you're eating and how your body is responding to the food you're eating. Cancer is about nourishment and Cancer is about digestion. So this can really be a great time to focus on the foods that generally nourish and support your body. So homemade foods, very Cancerian, whole foods, organic when possible, and foods that you know your body will digest well. You may even want to do something more on the anti-inflammatory way of eating, anything that will be more supportive for you. Um, and this isn't just about food, also from an emotional or symbolic perspective, but, which is very much part of it, but also think about the physical digestive system. Notice what's making you feel good. Notice what's giving you energy or what's depleting you or making you feel more inflamed or heavy or uncomfortable or irritated. Mars naturally brings heat and inflammation. So with Mars moving through a sign associated with digestion and nourishment, this is a really good time for us to be more intentional about what you're putting into your body and how nourishing it is for you. Cancer is a water sign, so anything about working with water, I think can be really soothing, really great, really supportive. So maybe spend time near the ocean if you can, rivers, lakes, take baths, take long showers, swim, cry, allow water to literally and symbolically help you move emotions through your body. And especially when these emotions feel uncomfortable, like anger, frustration, grief, sadness, resentment. Allow yourself to feel them. Sit with yourself. This is I think one of the most simple things that we can do, but also difficult because sitting with ourselves, closing your eyes and fully connecting with the emotion, it's an act of courage. Right? So instead of going into that place of this person did this to me, this person made me feel this way. This is their fault. Take a moment and come back to yourself. What am I feeling? Where am I feeling it in my body? What does this emotion need from me right now? Put your hand on your heart. Put your hand on your stomach. Very concerient. Breathe. Give yourself love, give yourself time if possible. And then after that, after the process, then you decide from a more neutral point of view what needs to happen, right? So maybe you need to express something. Maybe you need to confront somebody. Maybe you need to establish a boundary. Maybe it's about breaking up, leaving a situation, ending that friendship, ending that relationship, quitting your job, whatever it is. Maybe you need to be more protective of yourself or someone else. The goal is not to become passive and not do anything. The goal is to make sure that when you act, you're coming from a place of consciousness and awareness rather than emotional reactivity and triggers, emotional triggers. So this is when Mars in Cancer can be so powerful because when we learn to consciously work with our emotional energy, emotions stop being something that happens to us. They really become extremely important information because they're showing us what matters, what we love, what we need, where our boundaries are so important, and what we need to protect, right? So ultimately, what are you willing to do to create greater emotional safety in your life? That's the question that Mars in Cancer has for us. What are we willing to protect? Who are you willing to show up for? Do you need stronger boundaries? Do you need to nourish more of your relationships, including the one with yourself? What does your home need? What does your body need? And what do you need in order to feel at home with yourself? I think that's the biggest question here. What do you need in order to feel at home within yourself? So pay extra attention to those themes over the next 6 weeks. Notice where your emotions are becoming stronger, where you're becoming more protective, where anger is coming up, and also where old family dynamics, patterns, things from the past that may be resurfacing, but also where you suddenly feel more motivated to love, to nourish, to protect, to repair, to reconnect, and to create a deeper sense of love and belonging, right? That's the gift of Mars in Cancer. It's the courage to care deeply, the courage to really honor our emotional needs, to protect others, and um, and to protect our emotional needs without allowing these emotions to completely take over the wheels of our lives. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have not subscribed to my channel yet, please do so. It helps to support my work, and I'm wishing you many blessings during this Mars in Cancer cycle, and I will see you next time in the next video, hopefully very soon.